like music itself is just like an incredible language that God gives us. And he gives us because he loves us, and he gives us to mirror back in love to him. What's sacred, what's devotional, and actually how do we give these two things the space that they need to each thrive like really well.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Lost Sheep Podcast. My name is Cole Bissett, and I'm joined here today by
Evan A. Bear
and Nazario Pangallo, who doesn't have a mic. We're working on that situation, and we will get back to you in the future on that. But today we are very excited as a podcast for this episode because we're joined by one of the members of the Vigil Project, Andrew Goldstein. Would you like to give us a little bit about yourself and who you are?
Sure. It's good to be with you today. My name is Andrew. I am a dad of 5 daughters. I live here in South Bend, Indiana, and I'm a musician. I love music. I love especially teaching about music and serving the church through music. And I'm super excited to be with you all today.
Yeah. So,
So Andrew, I don't know if you knew this, but Nazario is actually a huge Notre Dame fan. So I pointed at him immediately
on.
when
Go
you said
Irish,
South
go
Bend.
Irish.
You're a Notre Dame fan, I'm guessing.
I can hear the screams from campus. Yeah, go Irish.
Okay, good.
That is just electric to hear.
What a good Catholic.
But yeah, so I actually met Andrew on my trip to Italy. And little did I know he was actually on the plane when I first flew into Italy. And because I was there by myself for the whole flight, and I get a text message from you, and it was like, "Oh, are you on the plane?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I am." And it was like, "No way!" And it turns out like 4 people from the pilgrimage were on the plane with us, which was really really cool. But yeah, so Andrew brought our quote for today, and we're kind of just gonna hop straight into it. It's a bit on the longer end, but it has a lot of really good content. And we're going to talk about music, especially since that's where your service is. But the quote goes, "The restoration of culture, spiritually, morally, physically, demands the cultivation of the soil in which the love of Christ can grow. And that means we must, as they say, rethink priorities. First, negatively smash the television set. And positively, put the time and money you now spend on such entertainment into a piano, so that music is restored to your home, common, ordinary Christian music, much of which is very simple to play. Love only grows. It cannot be manufactured or forced, and it grows on the sweet sounds of music."
The quote of the week.
Well, there's our quote of the week. Well, that's fun little timing on that. I love the cue, Nazario. But yeah, and this is from The Restoration of the Catholic Church, I believe, by
This is
John
Restoration
Senior.
of Christian Culture by John
Christian
Senior.
Culture.
This is an
There we go.
incredible book. Yeah.
And how long has it been since you've read the book? Like, is this a new thing that you've
This is
started out?
one that this is one that I think I return to every now and then. I probably read it about 2 years ago. My wife admittedly read it first. She is the saint among saints. She reads everything good before me and then says,
Uh-huh.
you should really look at this. But yeah, this is one of those that I just keep coming back to. And I think John Senior captures such an interesting idea of like what we need to do to kind of like restore culture, especially Christian culture. And he really hones in on this idea of music being like a key part of that. So it just moves my heart.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. I think out of the 3 of us, I'm probably more into music than you two. I think when I first got to college, Nazario was very kind of out of the music realm. Am I right on that a little bit? Yeah, kind of out of the music realm, and so I kind of introduced him to it, and so we got to experience it together and kind of grow with each other. Um, Now, on our time in Italy, we were graced with Bill Donaghy's time, and he talked a lot about the way of wonder and the transcendental of beauty. Um, and I kind of wanted to see where you like. We talked about how everybody has one transcendental, one thing that they really like to pursue. And I believe, if I remember correctly, yours was truth. Am I wrong?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Truth. Always truth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I wanted to see how music connects to that for you and how you intertwine the two, especially through your ministry.
Yeah, that is such a good question. So when we think about the transcendentals, goodness, truth, beauty, right? These are the things that I think like all of us lean into one more than the other. We look at goodness, truth, and beauty, and probably one of us is like, oh, I'm really leaning toward beauty. I'm really leaning toward truth. I'm really leaning toward goodness. For me, you'd be surprised, like as a musician, you'd think beauty would be it. Like, okay, beauty is the one that moves my heart, moves my mind. But for me, it's truth. And it took me a while to figure this out. I really actually struggled in my early years as a career musician, and struggled to understand like what is it that I'm after? Am I after like this huge, captivating, beautiful music that kind of leads people to God, or am I after something else? And so for a long time, I worked in the classical music space, where like beauty is kind of like the defining characteristic of everything that happens, right? It's think of like an amazing symphony, and like the goal of a conductor on stage, the goal of a full orchestra is to like kind of give you the clearest, most incredible sense of beauty. Think of like even a string quartet, four musicians tightly knit together. These things all kind of point towards beauty, and then ultimately beauty leads you to God. But for me, I always felt a little bit of tension in that. Like I didn't know that my own gift as someone who has charism and a love for the Lord didn't feel like beauty was necessarily it, but truth. Truth is an interesting one as a musician to begin to explore. And when I really started to feel this was when I was working in a parish. I was a parish music director for a number of years at St. Michael's in Olympia, Washington. And I started to feel this tension in the music that I was picking for the mass. I started kind of exactly where picking music that maybe the person before me had picked, and the music of the mass was just kind of like your standard fare. You think of like Table of Plenty or On Eagle's Wings, or these
Hmm.
these hymns that probably like a lot of people are familiar with. I started to feel like a tension in choosing those hymns. And the tension that I was really starting to put my thumb on is like, are these hymns saying what we want them to say? Are these really like the fullest, deepest like truths of our Catholic faith?
Hmm.
Um, and then I encountered a hymn that I will forever remember as the hymn that changed my life. It's called Sancti Venite, and it's this hymn that goes through 10 verses of incredible Eucharistic poetry. And it's, I think, one of the oldest hymns for the Eucharist, about the Eucharist. It's from the 7th century, but likely written prior. And this hymn tells all of these incredible images of, Christ is the person of, like, the priest is in the person of Christ. The bread came down from heaven, that we're saved by Christ's body and blood. And to me, I'm like, it was just such a dramatic shift in hearing text like that
Hmm.
over some other hymns, right? Over kind of the standard fare Eucharistic hymns that you might hear at an ordinary parish. And so, I heard this hymn and I was just so deeply convicted. I'm like, this is it. Like this is just in a way very beautiful, but it's just slam packed with truth. Um, and then I started kind of going down the rabbit hole of like, well, what what is the overlap between truth and music? And it's a dicey situation. I mean,
Yeah.
when you think of like secular music,
Hmm.
truth in music is an interesting thing to consider. Of course, like music is a vehicle for so many falsehoods, right? And so many things that, especially in the secular space, like we're uh, very obviously as Catholics or as Christians, like we don't believe. But even like in the uh, kind of beauty art space, you think of orchestras again. There's a ton that's happening in that realm that also kind of leans on this precipice of truth. Um, for instance, like you look back to the early 1900s and you see composers like John Cage who are writing like kind of scored music for hitting a bathtub and dropping water into a sink. And you have to start asking yourself like, well, he's not after beauty, but he's definitely trying to say something about truth. um, and so these things apply to the church as well. I think the church is grappling with that same question when we think about music, when we think about what we sing. Do we believe what we sing? And I think I think we believe what we sing whether we know it or not, and that's maybe the danger of music and the incredible gift of music. So truth is absolutely a transcendental I relate to. Long story short.
Yeah, I remember you speaking a lot into that, especially like I could pick up so much on this in your lectures that you gave to us, and it was incredible to see the way that your mind works, and to kind of be a part of that and your reasoning and your thoughts. And so I guess kind of where I'm going is you're obviously involved with the Vigil Project, um, and I would love to get into more of that story because like you've had these many different roles and positions, but how did you end up in the position you are today, with such an incredible group, and also as well, what makes the Vigil Project different? What's so special about them?
Yeah. So I'll take you kind of to the beginning of the Vigil Project, and then I'll kind of insert my own story within that. But the Vigil Project started in 2016 as a group of Catholic musicians who came together and said, we should have good and beautiful and powerful music for the seasons of the church, for these moments outside of the Mass, for these moments that are like just kind of like our daily lives of faith. Um, kind of the thing that you would maybe often hear people say is like, well, why don't we have like Catholic praise and worship? And that's kind of maybe what the Vigil Project's kind of getting an answer toward is like we can have this kind of music that moves our hearts, that moves our minds in the kind of different seasons of the church. And so they got together and they wrote a album for Lent and Easter that kind of immediately went viral. I mean, it was listened to over hundreds of countries by thousands and thousands of people. And what essentially happened was that the Vigil Project began to take this music and tour to parishes. Now, over time, if you've been in more than one parish for like 5 minutes, you notice that like music is actually like a pretty contentious issue at the parish level. um, I don't know about you guys, but
Yeah,
like,
we get that. We get that.
yeah,
Everybody's got opinions when it comes to music, that's for sure.
everyone has opinions. And like, even if you don't have opinions, it's likely you know somebody who does,
Uh-huh.
or maybe you pick a mass time or your place of worship or your church based on the music. I know, like for myself, there was a short period in my early 20s where I was just kind of fed up with Catholic music, and so I'm just like, well, I'm just gonna go to Hillsong. Like Hillsong's got better music, and so
Mhm.
I would go to Hillsong in the morning, and then we go to mass in the afternoon, and it kind of got the best of both worlds, maybe. But music's obviously a contentious thing, and I think the Vigil Project quickly realized that and started positioning our ministry in a different light, which is like to reveal that there's something deeper happening at the parish, and in our hearts and minds. I mean, the parish is not just like a building or a place; it's actually it's in us. That the church has kind of like a deep moment right now happening with music, and that actually affects all of us, every person listening, and you and I. And so here's the kind of beautiful thing that kind of happened over time. And this is how I got involved, is that the Vigil Project started to just maybe show the church a little bit more that there's different moments for the music that God gives us, right? Music itself is a huge gift. Um, and it's all from God. Like music itself is just like an incredible language that God gives us. And he gives us because he loves us, and he gives us to mirror back in love to him. Um, but within that gift, there's kind of like a lot of different moments that he gives us to use music in. And so there's the sacred moment, which is the one that we battle most over, which is like what happens in mass. The beautiful, the transcendent, the truthful, the kind of very narrow thing that exists in this 1 hour on Sunday. And that its purpose is primarily like lead us to heaven, to like raise our eyes and our sight and our line to God. That's like us being raised to him, right? And then there's kind of the other side of the coin, which is like devotional music, and then further down like secular music. And devotional music is really like God comes to me. He meets me exactly where I am. He uses my likes, my dislikes, you know, things that really move my heart and my mind, to draw me closer to him too. And so
Mhm.
there's this kind of world of devotional music that I think has gone largely unnoticed for a long time. And what happened after the Second Vatican Council, especially, is that we started smashing these things together. We actually started saying like sacred and devotional, let's just throw it all on Sunday morning, pack it all into an hour, and do the best we can to do all of it all at once.
Mhm.
Um, you know as well as I can, like as I do, like the life of a Catholic can't be smashed into like 1 hour on Sunday, and like the life of any Christian can't be smashed into 1 hour. It just doesn't work. And so there's kind of this like lived life of faith that we're called toward. That's devotion, and we need to kind of like separate that out from our Sunday mass experience. So what do I do? Like the work I do with the Vigil Project is kind of targeted in that area. I work with musicians. I help form musicians. I work with parishes and dioceses, and then I help write and provide resources for the church to help discern these things. What's sacred? What's devotional? And actually, how do we give these two things the space that they need to each thrive like really well, so that like the sacred can be really beautiful, sacred, transcendent, truthful, and the devotional can be really free, personal, emotional, close to Jesus, and that these things both have the space they need to like not honestly like conflict with one another, actually
Yeah.
both be its own thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I like a lot the we can't smash together everything into an hour on Sunday. We were just what was it, 2 or 3 weeks ago, our priest was giving a homily and he was talking about how like, you know, don't react. We can't be 1/7 Catholic. We have to be like 7/7, right? So if we're 1/7 Catholic and we're 6/7, like, whoever, then we're getting nowhere. But I kind of want to dive into this quote a little bit. And I especially like the beginning of the second paragraph where it kind of says, first, negatively smash the television set. And I like this a lot because it's something that like my mom says a lot. She's like, oh man, like, I hate my phone, like I hate the TV, I hate my like computer. I wish I could just live off the grid and, like have no electronics and whatever, which is completely unreasonable for my mother. um but it is one of those things that like we kind of strive to, and I think like we talk about being very present in interactions, being very present in what we do, which is kind of the sense of what I get from what this guy's trying to say.
Right.
But have you found ways in your life where you're like, you're smashing the TV and you're picking up, well, not picking up the piano, but you're smashing the TV and you're sitting down at the piano? And what does that look like, especially with, mission, with the ministry, with travel, with 5 girls, which I'm praying for you. What
You and everybody else. Yep.
what does smashing the TV look like for you in life right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So like actually I think that you touched on it right at the end. Like if we're going to talk about smashing the TV, first like let's just say the TV is not inherently bad, right? Like this is a dramatic quote to really
It's a
draw out.
metaphorical TV.
It's a metaphorical TV, sure. And if you feel inclined to actually smash your TV, like please go for it. It's probably good for you. But like we're not going to say like TV is evil or anything, or like cancel Netflix or whatever. But like there is a deeper thing happening here, which you just touched on. It's the heart of the home that these things really come to play. The domestic church. This is where like the life of the Catholic is lived out. And like while we have like our source and summit moment of Sunday for an hour and a half, if you're lucky, the life of faith is lived out in that 6 days a week in your home. What you do there actually matters a ton more, of course. So it gets us back to that source and summit where we can be fed again. And so for me personally, like I said, I was a parish musician. I was playing, countless masses and weddings and funerals, and then I would come home at the end of these experiences and quite honestly would struggle with like, how do I make music at home, or how do I pray at home with my family? At that point I did not have $5. I had far less, but still like the kind of weight of that question started resounding in my heart of like, why is it so easy for me as a musician to play in a mass and lead people in prayer, and it's this big public setting, but the second I'm in these recesses of my own home I start to struggle? That's a hard question. And so it ultimately led initially to this desire to start praying the liturgy of the hours. For me, music in the home started with the Psalms, and this was like kind of right around the COVID times. This was like early COVID. We're like clustered at home, and I'm still going to the parish to make music, but early COVID happens, and we're kind of sitting down, and we're like, well, I think we need to start praying this more. We need to start doing more. So we started singing one psalm, and just we would open up our Mundaline Psalter. It's a really fairly easy psalter to like pick up and start reading the music from. And we stumbled our way through. It was awkward, it was chaotic. I've got kids like buzzing around, and it is not by any means like a beautiful monastic, Vespers experience. If anything, it was just real life where, however we were, if my kids are crying or laughing or poking at each other or we're feeling good or not, like we would still sit down and like pray the liturgy of the hours together, or at least portions of it. And we eventually built up to praying more of it. But that started again kind of like a long journey for me of figuring out like what is the song of the home. As a dad, now that I have five, I noticed as my kids got older, like what are they singing? In the early years they were singing Wheels on the Bus and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and ABCs and all of that, and whatever variations they would come up with of those. And then they started getting towards school age, and they're kind of singing like honestly kind of silly stuff, like, and stuff that I'm like, this has no value or merit whatsoever. Stuff that was like sea shanties, like, what do you do with a drunken sailor? What do you, and I'm like, how is this the music of my home? And there's like a moment where I'm just like, man, this doesn't make any sense still. Now granted, like they were still doing good things, like they're still singing the Psalms, they're singing the Salve Regina, they're learning music in the mass, but the home is still this missing piece. So there was a real push for us as a family, probably 2 years ago now, starting to like sit down and say like, what is our repertoire? Like, what's the songs that we sing here? Some of that was like, we want to make sure we actually have folk music. They liked What Do We Do with the Drunken Sailor because it's like, it's fun to sing. So this doesn't need to be like a monastic experience or some kind of like sterile thing. Like we actually want to make sure we have fun. But what's, to your point back on the transcendentals, what's goodness, truth, and beauty when it comes to music in the home, like, and when it comes to fun music in the home. And so we started discerning like, let's use songs like I don't know, like the Crawdad song, or just like these historic folk songs, Shenandoah, even some slightly religious ones, but like things that kind of go that way, like I Heard the Voice of Jesus Say, or things that you might even hear like the Hillbilly Thomists sing as examples.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like these are like actually rooted in something deeper than even folklore. I mean, this is like rooted in like the human experience, and there's truth and goodness and beauty in that alone, even if it's not explicitly about our faith. And then kind of came to the next level of like, well, what hymns do we sing? What do we sing for lullabies? What do we sing at the end of meals? When we pray the rosary, can we sing the prayers of the rosary? And so it just kind of like expanded from there. And that's kind of how we answered that question. Now, consequently, we actually don't have a TV in our home, and I love it. I think it's great. But that is not because we smashed it. It's just because we just decided to do more with our time. So
Yeah, and first off, hi Andrew, I'm Nazario. This is like
Hey.
the first time I've talked in this episode, so just wanted to introduce myself real quick.
I was
but
glad you swung the mic over.
yeah, I'm looking at when you're talking. I looked at this one part of the quote that I kind of had a question about, and just like to poke at you a little bit more.
Let's
so
do it.
obviously, what you're talking about is amazing, and we all hope that one day we can cultivate this in our houses and in our families in this great way. But I look at the part where it says it cannot be manufactured or forced. And obviously, you went through a lot of reflection trying to figure out how to. Sorry, the mic just fell on me. But how do you do this, and what's
Right.
the right way to do this? Because obviously, you wanted to make it fun for your kids, but also have it rooted in the right things. But not only for a family, but also for the church when you're trying to transition some of the music into how do we connect with this modern age, but it cannot be manufactured or forced. How much of that was on your mind during this time? And, how do you still grapple with it and go forth? And, how do I make this where it's not manufactured or forced?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just to separate two things, like what John Senior's talking about is like actually love. Love can't be manufactured or forced. And like obviously, I think you talk to any parent, they'll tell you like there's always a concern about that. Like, am I authentically loving my children in a deep and humbling way? And like, am I showing them love in the way that they want to receive love, in particular, in the ways that they were made or fashioned or patterned to receive love? And so, you know, there's an element of that, I think, in every house where you question, like, are we doing that? And I'm going to separate that actually from music, and I'm going to move toward music, because I think that's that's just prayer and discernment and parenting. And, you know, I don't know that we need to go deep into that one today, but like, to talk about like music, actually, I think music, we almost point at it as saying the same thing, even though that's not what John Senior is necessarily saying here. I think we can look at music, or we can think about experiences like this, like, man, I can't just like show up in my house and sing, or like, I'm not gonna, you know, I even talk about like outside of the house settings, like talk about a classroom, talk about a men's group, talk about, you know, you guys gathering before this podcast and you're praying, and it's like, do you have the inclination? Can I sing? Probably not. You probably don't think about that. And to think about adding music into those places, while it is so good to, you're probably wondering, like, would it feel forced if I did? Um, and so like, I actually think that's fair. I think it's really, really fair to think about that. And I also think it's like, we almost have to like move past it. There's like a level of like discomfort we have to be okay with, to really reap the reward of singing, to reap the rewards that like singing has for us. Interestingly, just before this podcast, I found a like a research article that was just put out in Germany. It's from the cluster of excellence at the Religion and Politics Center at University of Münster in Germany. And I was referencing this in some essay that I was writing, but I think it's actually really applicable here, where they just did a whole study on like the countries that are becoming more secularized but were historically Christian. And so Germany's one of these, I think Finland's one of these, and probably Holland and France. Canada's in there. But like, they started studying what are the things that are actually like successfully passing the faith down. And unsurprisingly, they're like, well, you know, when two parents are in the home, that makes a huge difference. When those two parents share a religion, that makes a huge difference. But then the deeper thing is like, when those two parents are in the home, they share religion and they're praying and singing. That's what's really like strongly passing the faith down to their next generation. So that there's like a level of like, I think that we know like it's obviously ideal to have two parents in the home, and many homes don't. And like, they, of course, God redeems that, and does amazing things through that. I was one of those too. I didn't have two parents in the home. But like, I also think that there's like a level of knowing, like, man, these things are actually really effective in proclaiming our faith, in evangelizing, and actually like creating this kind of culture that John Senior's talking about. Um, and so like, there's maybe a fear of inauthenticity, but I actually think largely, like 9 times out of 10, it's going to come out as like not feeling that way. And like, it looks a lot like this. It looks a lot like, you know, you guys just gathered before this podcast and you're like, hey, you know, let's pray. And, you know, within this prayer, I was just thinking, like, you know, what's been on my heart today is just the refrain to Lord, I need you. I'm going to sing it. If you guys want to sing it with me, like, totally go for it. Don't worry about it if you don't want to. 9 times out of 10, they're going to sing with you. Right. But like, it's just an invitation. It's purely an invitation. And that's always what makes something authentic, is just like the pure invitation. So like, when I'm cracking open a Psalter at home, or we're sitting down to like sing a folk song, we pull out a guitar after dinner. That's like our time to do music.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that's just an invitation. Sometimes my kids are there and sometimes they're not. Sometimes I'm not. Like, sometimes there's like, I don't want to pick up that guitar and I'm not in this place, but like, it's an invitation. And, you know, in seasons where I kind of let it go a little bit, my wife's like, hey, let's go grab the guitar. That's all it is. It's just an invitation.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned the guitar, because I actually have no idea what instruments you play, which is really hilarious considering I spent 10 days with you.
He's got a cello.
Yeah, I do see a cello
sitting
in the back. In the
background,
back
so
of
this
the,
is a very interesting musical mix that he's got going
Yeah.
on.
So I guess I'm curious. Double question for you. What all instruments do you play? Obviously, there is a little bit of variety. And then what is it about music in particular that makes it so authentic and touching to our soul? And I guess
That's a great
those are my. I know it's two very different
That's
ones.
gonna be a question.
That's a deep
It's a question
question.
and a
Yeah,
half.
but figured I'd throw it in there for you.
Let's take one of those at a time.
Okay.
Say the first one again.
What instruments do you play basically?
Okay, that's an easy one. So I grew up playing piano, and then I
Okay.
studied voice in college, and then learned the organ kind of after the fact. I played guitar kind of along the whole way. It was kind of like my fun instrument. I hilariously, and this is why I keep this in the back, I don't play cello. I like to have the
Really?
reminder that like there's some I have a desire to learn, and I like pull my fingers around a little bit, and I'm trying to learn it, but it's just a reminder to me in the background that there's always room to learn. So,
Uh-huh.
yep, there you go.
I like that idea. Honestly, maybe I
It's an
should start.
expensive reminder. I
Yeah,
don't think
it,
I
it
could
is a
do
nice
that.
reminder. I think I should probably like keep a piano in my room because I want to learn piano. Well, I do have a piano in my room. That's my bad. I do actually. It just sits there, untouched. Just guitar for me. Do you play any instruments, Evan? No, way, right?
I played
Yeah,
the
what do you guys all play?
recorder in third grade, and that's what
Recorder?
I was not musically inclined. I played the recorder. I tried my hand at the trumpet. I was bad at it. But besides that, nothing.
Well, don't you have a guitar in your room?
I do the Andrew method. I have a guitar and I look at it longingly every once a week, and then I haven't picked it up yet. So
Yeah, and then Nazario actually had a little bit of training in his youth, right, with the piano, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, with the piano, a little bit, wee bit of training. I was trained for like probably about the same amount of time on the piano, and then just never picked it back up. But just guitar for me.
I love that.
And then I guess the follow up question of that, I guess you could say I play ukulele as well. String instruments all kind of blend together, but well, except for violin and cello, those are a little bit more difficult. But I guess the second question to that compound was, what is it about music that makes it like so authentic and touching to our soul, especially because there are different types. Obviously, we have the devotion and then devotional music and then sacred. Yes, they're both two sides of the coin, but they also are still the same coin. And so the fact that they are the same coin, what is it about them being that just music in general instead of just a category that makes it so special and so touching to our heart?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think we know enough, like scientifically and anecdotally, and at this point to say like music is it's part of everything that we do. Um, on the scientific side, I love facts, I love data. Like on the scientific side, let's talk about that first. Like singing is one of those things that just time and time again, like proves just how society and how humanity works. There's all these beautiful studies where, when men sing, uh, men who are hearing men sing have the part of their brain that enables like storytelling like completely opened. And so there's like a piece of that where you're like, wow, there's a real truth to like when I sing, it's actually like opening up someone's capacity to receive like story, part of our history, part of our like shared identity. When women sing, things like language and facts convey. So, if wives, if you're worried if your husbands are not going to remember the grocery list, like sing it. Actually, 9 times out of 10, maybe he'll remember it. There's like scientific fact behind this, right? There's also things like when we sing together. Amazing concerts, when you go to an amazing concert and the whole crowd is singing, there's been scientific studies that show like their heart rates start to sync up with one another. That's beautiful. Only music can bring unity to people in such a physical way. That's just like the physical scientific reality. We're not even talking about like the theological or spiritual realities of these things, which is like music clearly helps us to understand who we are and who God is. That's the purpose of music, right? So like we look at these things deeper. It's why music is like a deeply critical part to the mass. It's not like an extra to the mass. It's actually like critically part of it. When you look at like the structure of the mass and what the mass is, it's meant to be song. Think about like dialogues within the mass. You have moments where the priest is like, the priest will say, "Sing, the Lord be with you," and we respond, "And with your spirit." This is like actually a dialogue of song of love, to John Senior's point, like authentic love that's built around music, right in the crux of the mass at different moments, right? And so like in the sacred space, of course, music helps us to experience heaven, like nothing short of that. It's a foretaste of heaven. I'll stop rambling in a moment, but the one thing I love, and since you mentioned Bill Donahue, I know that there's maybe shared love here. if you look at the beginning of Tolkien's The Silmarillion, there's just a beautiful kind of instance of, it's almost like a biblical Genesis account where he's using music to actually describe like the creation and the fabric of being, right? And so, God, the God figure, is singing a melody, and all of the angels, resound in this melody, and they rejoice, and like, God is so good, and they're singing this melody. And then Melkor, the evil one, introduces a counter melody, and it all starts to unravel and become chaotic and fall apart. And then this happens again. God wipes the slate clean, creates a new melody, and all the angels are like, well, it's even better than the original melody. And then they're all singing, and then still Melkor introduces a counter melody, and it all kind of falls apart again into chaos. And then ultimately, like, earth is the effect of this. Like, he banishes Melkor to earth, and all of this. But this is an interesting thing to really talk about. Like, that what was void is now not void, and music is sort of the prompting of that. I think while that is Tolkien, and we're talking about, like, fantasy here, there's some truths in what he's trying to share and unpack, which is like that music is part of that tension that we feel in our lives. We like rejoice with hymns, and we're praising God, and it brings us deep into the heart of what heaven is, and it gives us a foretaste of it. And then, like, at the same time, we have these inclinations where it's just like, man, I just want to listen to stuff that's like, I don't know, crummy Eminem or something. I don't know. Like, there's these parts of my heart that I'm like, I want to listen to this thing, that this distortion, this chaos, and ultimately that's the battle of sin and redemption. But I think we see that even in music, and I think music actually leads us within and outside of that. So that's what music does. That's why, for one, it's so important, and I think that's also why it's so easily overlooked. Is like, it is just part of who we are. I've literally only once ever heard of a soul not moved by music, and I think there's an interview somewhere. I heard about it from somebody, but it's Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon. At one point, has this interview where he gives, and he's I think the instance of this was like 9/11 just happened, and he was with somebody, and he's like, do you need to like listen to music or something? It doesn't really do anything for me, but like, if that helps you here, like, and I think, and they put on a CD or something, and as they're driving, and I don't know, I think that music, maybe with the exception of Jeff Bezos, like, does move each and every one of us. There's a unifying factor in that, and that's unique. That's very unique. I think it's only something God can pattern within us. So
Yeah, I completely agree. Music definitely an incredible gift from God, and we're so thankful for all the ways that you have used music. And I know I'm thankful for how God has used Cole to give me music.
amen.
And so, yeah, we are going to give you guys, the audience, a new way to incorporate music into your lives with our next segment.
Ladies and gentlemen, the practical prayer practice of the week.
Yeah, so as we always do, we have our guest bring the practical prayer practice of the week. So, Andrew, would you like to introduce the practical prayer practice of the week?
Yeah, the practical prayer practice of the week is going to be Musica Divina. I want you to just like think of a moment or a time when God did move you through music. And like, think back to the detail, almost like go into like a Ignatian place. Like, where were you? When was it? What was around you? Who were the people around you? What place were you in? Like, rebuild the sights, the smells, the feels of that time that like God used a song or something to move you. And then I want you to just like linger in contemplation in that song, in that place for a few minutes. And then I actually want you to like go listen to it, pull out the song, no matter how old or cheesy it is, and just like play it again, hear it again, pray with it again, and then ask the Lord to just, every time you listen to it, maybe listen a few times, ask the Lord to just reveal something new about the way that He uses music in your life to draw Him nearer to you. Draw Him nearer to you. And then especially just be aware of like the time of silence and then the time of music. I think that we think of music as like the track start to finish. I'm playing, it's 3 minutes long. When it ends, music is done. but like music is actually just as much in the silence as it is in the noise. And so like allow the time to just kind of float. Maybe it'll be some time of listening, maybe it'll be some time of just like receiving the silence and just mulling in that. But I have a feeling that the Lord has something deep for you, and just the way that he uses music to just relate to you and draw nearer to your heart. So find that song, bring yourself to that place and listen to it.
We've been doing Lectio a little bit more this semester
Mhm,
with
for
between
sure.
y'all and between the Bible study and stuff like that. And I think one of the coolest things that kind of that you said that I love is, as much as the noise, the active part of it is important, so much more so is the silence. And I think
Right.
about like Fantasia almost here. Are y'all familiar with
Yeah, yeah.
Fantasia? Okay. Andrew, you know what Fantasia is? I'm hoping.
Absolutely.
Okay. So there's like parts in Fantasia where like it gets really quiet or almost silent, right? And it's like that, like waiting. Almost you're like, okay, like I know there's gonna be like a big boom or a crescendo or like something going on, but like I don't know yet. And so it's almost like one of those points where your body is like physically going back to what you're saying, Andrew. Your body's almost like physically reacting to that, but also you're like anxious.
Right.
You're awaiting it. You're on the edge of your seat. Um, and so I talked to a friend a couple weeks ago, and one of the things he said, and this is again going to sound familiar to you too, was that prayer is anything that draws you closer to God, right? Anything that lifts your soul to Christ. And so a lot of people are like, oh, how can music be prayer? How do I use this to pray? Um, and I've been applying this to a lot of different things. I think we went as far as like even the mundane stuff, right? Weightlifting, cooking, right? Like how can you glorify God in those things, right? But if you can take your music, if you can take that music and really apply it to how is this drawing me closer to Christ? How is this drawing Christ closer to me? Then that's your prayer. That's your form of prayer. And it's really, it's not about music. It is about music, but it's not about music. It's about all things, right? How
Right.
can we transform those daily things we do into those forms of prayer?
Yeah, I mean, just to talk about the silence piece, I talked about John Cage earlier, the one who composed for the bathtub. He has an amazing piece of music called 433, and it's almost like a theatrical piece. But the pianist or whoever's playing it will walk on stage and they'll sit down and they'll put their hands at the piano and then close the lid. And for 4 minutes and 33 seconds, the pianist just sits on stage in quote complete silence. Now, this is an interesting piece of music, and there's awesome like newspaper articles of its premiere, and John Cage is like, of course, it's not silent. The sound of the audience realizing what's happening and like chuckling becomes part of the music. The sound of the guy in the back coughing, or the pianist shifting in his seat, or there's this fullness of sound that's happening that ends up making the piece of music, right? And so what John did, which was fascinating, is just like he wrote a piece of music for the audience. Like it's actually them that's making the music. But that happens even in our day. Like I think, if you're praying with like, Matt Mars, Lord, I need you, and then the song ends, these moments of silence after are actually just as much part of the song as the song itself. It's the noise around us, it's the feeling around us, it's the physicality. This isn't like separate from our life or our being. It's actually incorporated within it. Um, and so I think that God uses all of that still to speak to us. And so to create just as much silence as we create noise, I think is critical.
And I think it's really cool talking about the silence still being music.
Mm-hmm.
We refer to like ambiance and white noise all the time. One of the most critically acclaimed, I don't even know, I don't think you would call it a soundtrack. Um, maybe a soundtrack, and this is gonna sound really crazy, is Minecraft's background noise. And I know that sounds incredible, but it's actually it's been reviewed very, very heavily for its ability to turn itself into white noise and be that background music. And I find a lot of the time that in nature, the sounds of the bird chirping, the rustling grass, the leaves, all of these other things form its own song. Um, and because we're so used to those things as humans, that becomes our natural silence that we can
Right.
enter into. And so for me, I've been able to enter into that a lot with my mornings. I'll go to a place that's familiar to me, whether that's my living room, our front porch, and just sit there. And I've actually slowly, very slowly, working my way through God is Beauty. Um, very slowly. I'm on. I think I'm still in Christopher West's commentary, so like the 80 around 80s as far as pages go, but really slowly working my way through that and trying to um, contemplate that and the beauty of the silence that's around me, because I think the fact that there is music all the time kind of shows its universality and so much that it can even be applied to that silence.
Right.
We talked about it. We talk about it all the time. St. Augustine says singing is praying twice. And so every time we pray and we are making this poetry with our words, it almost is like a song. And so to be able to use both our talents and our just our words and put them into a prayer makes it so much more effective, which is why this is probably the most excited I've ever been for a practical prayer practice, just because I don't know. I love music, and I think this is a really good one. So we challenge the audience to enter into the Musica Divina. What do you want? Oh, Nazario's got a point. I'm going to swing the mic over.
I actually just have a question for our two music people here. Obviously, I'm guessing when you're talking about this Musica Divina, we're going to be focusing on some spiritual type of music, whether it be more of a church hymn or if it's more of a, a gospel song that we hear on the radio, whatever it may be. My question for you guys is it possible to have a secular song involved in a Musica Divina? Because Cole, you turn on a good amount of secular music in the car, which I'm not saying is a bad thing. I'm trying to
Comes
tap
the
into
bus.
here what goodness can we find from this music that you guys see as the music people, or should we be trying to stay away from it completely? What do you guys think?
I think no, we
I-
just automatically defer to Andrew.
Yeah, I
We
was
just
gonna let
look
I
at
was
him
gonna let
until he
Andrew go
answers.
first. My answer is probably not gonna be as good, but I'll let you go ahead.
No, I actually want to hear your answer, but
Okay.
I think like just quite frankly, like God uses the full gift of music. And so like even if there's music that's like disordered, let's say there's music where like the lyrics are just completely explicit and whatever, we've got bad themes. Like God can still redeem that, right? God is not outside of like redeeming this kind of music. But I think God uses the full gift actually of music to reach us where we are. And so like the challenge in Musica Divina, actually, just to say that clearly, it doesn't have to be sacred music. It doesn't have to be religious music. It actually just has to be like a song that God used for you, like your relationship with Him. Like hilariously, and just to demonstrate this, when I was 5 or 6, my parents got me a like a CD player. I was so pumped because I could actually like own music, and they got me a double disc set of the best of surf rock. And I kid you not, like I listened to these songs day and night, like even my head by the pillow, like the radio's right there, and like I'm listening to these songs. And like let's be real, these songs are not redeeming in any way. Like lyrics, two songs, two girls for every boy, like it's stuck in my head all the time. But like that lit for me actually like a real passion for like I love music. Like I just really love music, and like God totally used that in my own journey to just draw me into a deeper relationship with Him. And so I still go back and I still listen to surf rock, and I love Dead Man's Curve and hilarious surf rock songs that are so dumb, but like God used them, right? And so I can return to that place almost like an investigator, almost like returning into a place where something happened between me and God to glean something new.
I was thinking, and this is gonna be a trip. Stay with me. So like, we have to think about places where we can evangelize, right? And so like something I always think about is like go to places where they're playing secular music because people gets it in, right? So like we were at the bar the other day, right? And like people wouldn't have been there if they weren't, dancing and drinking and having all this fun, right? But a guy comes up to me who I know fringe-fully, right? He's on the fringe. I know his name and whatever. He's like, "Hey, Evan, so good to see you, blah blah blah. I've been trying to go to mass, but like, I can't seem to wake up on Sundays and stuff like that. Like, is there a later mass or something?" I was like, "Yeah, dude. Like, we have a 6 p.m. Like, you should come and like, like I'll be there. So like, text me. Do you still have my number? Like, yada yada yada. And that's not to say like, you know, we're entering into this, you know, drunkenness, into this like disordered music kind of, right? Like if I'm you know, yelling along to Kanye, right, somebody's gonna be like, hey, this guy, maybe I shouldn't ask him about mass, right? But you know, as Andrew says, it's stuff that moves our body, and it's also stuff that moves our souls, and it's stuff that unifies and collects people. And so like those are the areas where we can also seek to use that to evangelize. Not use the music itself, but use the opportunity and use the occasion to evangelize.
Yeah, and I think to answer your question from from my point of view, and I know you get to experience this a lot, just because you're around me so much, is I find it so entertaining just to listen to different songs and try to pick apart like why is this song so special? What is the meaning of this song? What delivery are they trying to like? What do they want the audience to feel? And so all the time I'm like, I'll be in the car and I'm listening to a song. I'm like, Nazari, you have no idea how good this song is. I'm like, there's so much meaning, the depth. I mean, did you hear that chord? Did you hear that sound? And I was like, it's incredible. And this is what they're trying to do. And a lot of the time, I find it the most entertaining to find it in the songs that you would least expect. And because I think there's goodness in a lot of the places that we can't often see, and that's kind of the point of the podcast. You know, we take everyday quotes, and my pitch to everybody is we take everyday quotes from Taylor Swift to Father Mike Schmitz, and try to turn them and align them to the Christian message and find the goodness in these things. Because when God created the world, He looked at the world and said, "It is good," and so our goal is to kind of search for that. And I love doing that with music. Especially my favorite band of all time is Need to Breathe. I love Need to Breathe, and you know they are not proclaimed like technically acclaim themselves as a Christian band. A lot of their music is Christian, but they want that vulnerability and freedom to kind of just write about life's experiences and not just it's not all God, 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 but it is actually all God, God, God because they're using their talents in a way that is allowing people to connect with that and then eventually turn it towards God in the end. So for me, I love kind of branching out to different genres and different forms of music to kind of seek the talents of other people because the talents of other people inspires me in music especially. But yeah.
Yeah. And let me just say, lest I err into a wandering error here, but like just because music moves our soul doesn't mean it should be in the mass. Maybe
Yeah.
like work that the other way
Mhm.
too. But like we can have music that moves our soul deeply and that we love and like that even is explicitly about God and it might not even be right for the mass. And that's okay. Um so just to like almost separate these things, like there is a sacred and there's an amazing beauty to that. And God uses music in every moment of our life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We are going to transfer over to our Shepherd of the Week. Nazari, would you cue the intro?
Ladies and gentlemen, the Shepherd of the Week.
Andrew, I just want to say I appreciate you putting up with our shenanigans.
I love it.
These intros are actually my voice. You would sound it sounds shocking, you know. It sounds like an AI generated voice, but it's my voice with some different sound effects overlaid above the top.
I
Um,
love it.
so we just applied these to the show recently and have been getting pretty. I think it's pretty funny, and it adds more of a comedic like touch to the show. But we kind of just talked about our Shepherd of the Week not right before this show, and I found her as I was surfing the web for somebody that I would love to pick to see who would be the good Shepherd of the Week for this week, and I was like, I'm gonna pick this girl, and why am I gonna pick her? And I said because I think Andrew is gonna know everything about her, and because this just is so it relates to you so well, and so I'm gonna let you actually kind of take the wheel on this. Since I can't imagine that you haven't had some sort of journey with this saint.
The Shepherd of the Week is Saint Hildegard of Bingen, Saint Hildegard von Bingen. Saint Hildegard, if you don't know her, is a incredible mystic and doctor of the church. She lived just after the year 1000. She lived between along the 11th century, and she's a really fascinating figure. She for one, was like a medical doctor and a writer and a musician and a playwright and a nun. And I mean, this one of those people that you're like, how did one person accomplish so much wisdom and beauty and creativity in one lifetime? Um, if you explore her works, there's a lot of incredible writings that are both pictorial, like she would paint, and mystical, she would write. And then largely within that, like music, she wrote chant specifically for women, for her sisters to sing. She wrote a symphony. She wrote theater. I mean, it's just an incredible amount of work. Now, interestingly, Hildegard died, and then was very quickly, I think, had a cause for canonization like kind of rallied around her. They knew she was holy. They knew she was mystical. She had a lot of support. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, though somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure, rumor has it that, like, the letter for her canonization was being carried to Rome and got lost. And then the cause was like largely forgotten. They didn't know if Rome got it or not. I mean, we're talking about like Middle Ages, so it's like, who knows that the paperwork arrived and who actually carried it. And it wasn't until very recently, it was under Pope Benedict, I think in 2012, that she was finally canonized. And I think that's just incredible. And so I just think that this is a saint for our time, though she lived 1,000 years ago. And if you want to explore her work, her music is stunning and beautiful. Her writing about medicine, especially, was like so far advanced for the Middle Ages and for her time that there's even things still today that she like figured out. The doctors are like, nope, she had it right. And so this is an incredibly powerful mystic saint for our modern day.
Yeah, I remember the first thing that stuck out to me when I was researching this with Nazario was I saw the huge gap in the canonization. I was like, "What in the world is that?" And I was like, "That doesn't normally happen, you know." I think it's normally like what, a 30-year period, maybe 40 years in between, just canonization. Um, Especially we've got the modern day saints of Carlo Acutis now, which is so cool. Cool to say that there's been a saint canonized in my lifetime, multiple saints now, which is just so incredible. And to say that we got to see St. Carlo Acutis in person is really incredible as well. So yeah, I think St. Hildegard is absolutely perfect for this episode, and just pursuing and showing the passion that she had for music and how she can apply it to her prayer, as well as using her talents in composition and artwork, and really being able to give back to the community as much as she's taking in herself. We talk all the time about receiving, and then keep receiving, and then pouring out, and I think she was the perfect resemblance of that. So real quick, that is kind of our final little segment of the episode. We normally take this last 5-10 minutes normally to wrap up, talk about our little final thoughts. Do you want to the mic, talking to the mic? Got it. Yeah, it's our little final thoughts. Is there anything in particular that's preying on your heart on this episode that you have yet to say?
Yeah, no, like, great question. Yeah, I guess to say, like, for one, just take a step. Like, if you're thinking about praying with music, just start. Liturgy of the Hours is maybe like a daunting place to start, but I'll tell you, like, it's actually really helpful just to have it in front of you and to start doing it. Praying morning prayer or evening prayer. There's amazing apps to do that. The Universalis is one app. The Mundelein Psalter is an amazing book for that. And if any of the work of the Vigil Project intrigues you, like, of course, you can head to thevigilproject.com and find that. We are, with Word on Fire, putting out a book largely on what I just shared with you, which is like, how do you pray at home? So it's a 2-volume book on the Liturgy of the Hours, how to sing those at home, and then folk songs, hymns, chants, how to use those during each liturgical season at home. So keep an eye out for that. That'll be next summer 2026, from Word on Fire and the Vigil Project.
Yeah, that's an awesome plug right there. Also, got to plug the Lost Sheep podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check out our merch. But my final thing for you, Andrew, first off, thank you for coming on to this episode. We're so glad to have you here. But finally, this is going to be a much simpler question. I just want to know, what is your favorite song to praise and worship the Lord with? It's just very simple to end it out for me. But thank you for being on the episode.
I'm gonna answer that with two because it's just like so hard to pick one. I love Greater You Lord. Greater You Lord is just an incredible worship song. It draws my heart. I know I already mentioned Sancti Venite is like a hymn that draws my heart and just my mind, especially in truth. And then Mahler's Symphony of a Thousand. That's just another one where it's just like if you want to just listen and just receive music, Mahler's Symphony of a Thousand is just one of those pieces that just pulls your heart out of your chest and just throws it. So it's um it's an experience of the divine for sure. And I think Mahler had an amazing sense of that. So if you want to just listen to music, start there.
Yeah, I think one more thing. I was getting a little worried here that we wouldn't plug the book that you had been working on for so long. I was like, is Andrew gonna mention it? I feel like that's kind of important. But yeah, I remember you telling us about that, and it's so incredible that you're using your talents in that way. I think
Thank you.
it's definitely it's lesser thought about among just the families and people and us as students here at college about, okay, what does music look like when we get back to our house? Like, how do we still use those talents? And I think the it's a really good business idea just in general, just to have that and to actually apply it. One more thing for me, I had a question. I real quick, I don't know, I know you're involved more on the liturgical side of things for the Vigil project, but did you have anything to do with the editing or the lyrics in the House of the Lord, that by the Vigil project? Because I don't know what it is about that song, but that is like in my top 10 recently of like listens. I think it's incredible, especially
Praise God.
hearing how much Greg used Modena's experience with that. It's such a beautiful song and it's so cool.
Yeah, actually, thank you so much. And no, I had nothing to do with it. So I creatively, I that is entirely this is just the beautiful work of my team at the Vigil Project: Greg, Andrea, Andrew Ferguson, Sophie, and the amazing musicians we involve. That song did come from Modena, and so it was an experience of Greg Boudreau, our co-founder, co-director, um, just bearing his heart and kind of learning a new season, and it was all kind of surmounted in this incredible song. So if you're looking for like a fun listen, actually House of the Lord is just released, I think 2 months ago, and it's worth
Hmm.
listening to.
So I got a few things. I got my kind of wrap up, and then I got two listener announcements, and then a question. So I'll go with the question for you first, Andrew. One artist that's eternally playing in my house, in my car and everything, is Ben Rector. Are you a Ben Rector fan? I know some people are staunch anti. I know some people are staunch for. So where do you fall on that kind of spectrum?
I lean for, and I won't say that I'm a Ben Rector aficionado by any means. So but I do think that Ben has a very fascinating way of just being so witty with his lyrics and with his melodies that I think is unique and is certainly just packed full of talent. So I respect that deeply.
Cool, awesome. But just a guy that like I follow him on Instagram, and I always find he's like with his kids, he's with his faith, like he's very real and true. To your point, just kind of to wrap up, my final thoughts are, we do like I was super hyped for this episode because we do the personal prayer practice to like invite people into prayer, but it also is like a way of reaching out to those who don't pray.
Mhm.
And I kind of think like my always hope with doing a new personal prayer practice is like maybe we'll reach someone who doesn't pray and they're like, man, this is really exciting. Like this is something that I would really like to do. And so I hope that like someone is listening out there and is like, hey man, I've never tried to like pray with music. Like let's try to do that, right? Let's try to just listen to music. And then, that hits a chord for them, and that's their invitation to pray, their invitation to the faith. So I was super excited for this episode. Two quick announcements. One, I got a text during this podcast that one of my close friends' mothers had been diagnosed with cancer this week. So I ask y'all to keep her in your prayers. And then the last thing is, if you're this far into the episode, you might have noticed that the thumbnail is going to be a little bit different. So if you haven't already guessed, I got engaged over the weekend. The thumbnail is my wonderful now fiance, Caroline Sims, who we had on the podcast before I was an official member twice. She was on individually, maybe.
I
No,
think you were
she
there
only
for both.
once. Yeah, so
Yeah.
she was on with me. We discussed a quote by Therese of Lisieux, if I'm not
The
mistaken.
sailing your ships quote,
Yes.
I believe, is what we talked about.
But
yeah.
super exciting, entering a very interesting phase of life, one that's complicated and a little bit stressful and crazy, but I'm super excited and happy to be here. So yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I will conclude. We're definitely going to conclude with that because that's a great ending point. Again, Andrew, thank you so much for giving us your time. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for bringing the wisdom you have to us and allowing us to receive it. It's been absolutely incredible, and thank you for the time in Italy. From a personal perspective, for me, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I do view it as one of the bookmarks in my life and my faith, where I'm like, okay, like in this moment, like I understand the purpose of music a little more, and now I understand how to apply it to my life and to bringing that to other people. So we're really, really grateful for that. We're grateful for you. Thank you again, listeners. Like, subscribe, comment, follow us on Instagram, Spotify, social media, as well as like, subscribe, comment, follow everything for the Vigil Project as well. They are on pretty much any social media platform you can look for. They have a website. They are doing wonderful, wonderful things and are really, truly making moves in the Catholic Church. So if you're interested in any of the things that Andrew mentioned, I'll have him plug in a second if I missed anything. Please go look into it. Is there anything that I missed on the Vigil Project's end? Nothing?
No, sir. What a
Okay.
humbling privilege to be with you all. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening to the Lost Sheep podcast, and God bless.